Hey everyone, happy almost February and welcome again to More Layers. I'm Seth Mariano.
And I'm Jordan Smith. And if you can't tell by the hoodie that I'm currently wearing, I am in a good mood right now because of the topic we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah, we have so Sunday it was determined that Super Bowl 59 will be between the Philadelphia Eagles, Jordan's team, and the two-time defending Kansas City Chiefs. And we'll get in a little bit about, you know, some of the numbers. I did a bunch of research and I'll get into that later, but yeah, it's definitely exciting for Jordan and kind of by extension for myself. So, yeah, fly Eagles fly, I say.
Which is definitely appreciated. Although I was also rooting for the Bills to get there too. And it seemed like they had a real shot, but
Yeah, I will say I think it was an improvement, at least from the last time my team, the Bills, and the Chiefs clashed in the AFC title game. I feel like the first time it was a bit wonky, and
sure.
like they couldn't quite get it together. And I feel like I could say that more or less as to how the Bills I feel like collapsed this time around as well. But yeah, I just I feel like they're going to have to make some pretty dramatic changes in order for that well what I would call the red curse to stop and yeah get replace some people maybe rethink their strategy. We'll see what happens next year.
For sure. Because this is starting to become a recurring thing for the Bills, unfortunately, where they get to the playoffs, they seem pretty solid, and then they go up against the Chiefs and just can't quite get it done for one reason or another.
Yeah, but it was a good year though for I'd say for Buffalo. I think like Josh Allen I think set some new franchise records and became like the like career all-time leader amongst I think like the active seventh year veteran QBs or something in terms of career victories. So I think it's been at least something of an improvement from last year.
Sure. And Josh Allen was one of the contenders for the MVP title, so that should say something.
Yeah, but anyway, so Super Bowl 59 will be in about 2 weeks in New Orleans, which by the way is one of my personal list of places I might like to travel pretty soon. Um, yeah, yeah, I think it would be pretty cool. But well, there are going to be some big names definitely in the entertainment. There, Kendrick Lamar will be headlining the halftime performance, and I was just looking this up before we got started. And this is a pleasant surprise. Lauren Daigle is actually going to be doing a little performing before the game as well. So
So she's like a pregame show
yeah,
type of.
yeah, or like pregame, or like just before kickoff, or something like that. So,
Okay, do you think she's doing the national anthem or something different?
no, actually, that's going to be done by I'm already blanking on the name, John Batiste, who
Hmm.
was like until recently the band leader for the Late Show.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's going to be singing that, and Lauren Daigle is going to be doing like "America the Beautiful" or something before that, I think. So
All right.
yeah, yeah, and so yeah, so yeah, some things to look out for, and Josh Allen's wild girlfriend, now fiance Haley Steinfeld, also the voice of Spider Gwen in the Spider Verse, is also reportedly going to appear in a commercial at some point during the Super Bowl, apparently for Novartis.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wasn't really sure about the commercials this year. I haven't heard too many ideas of what can be expected in advance. Usually the commercials are at least okay. Some of them can be pretty funny, which I think is usually the intention. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they have this year.
I don't know. It's at least fun, I think, like to spot and like maybe a celebrity you might know a little bit about, and in some commercial you probably didn't have no idea what it was going to be. Like I think it was maybe last year. I think she's a TikTok star. Addison Ray was in something for like Doritos or Sour Patch or something.
Doritos could be it because they usually have at least one or two advertisements at the Super Bowl, or at least they used to. I don't know if they still do or not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, so I spent a good chunk of like the past couple days kind of looking at some um, um, considerable facts and statistics and numbers pertaining to the two Super Bowl teams, Chiefs and Eagles, and and I think after you've kind of compared everything that we're going to talk about that I wrote down, that I think you can pretty much make a pretty good solid conclusion. But we'll get to that. But anyway,
Sure.
so so the Kansas City Chiefs, notably, are the first team to advance to the Super Bowl for a third straight time after winning the last two. They also won their first 9 games of their season for the first time since 2013. They stayed undefeated longer than anyone else. They were the first team to win 15 or more games in a single regular season since 2015. So a handful of outstanding achievements there.
They've definitely have done some things that have stood out, like most prominently, like you mentioned, the whole fact that they're here at the Super Bowl for the third time. And the other thing is that before you even get to the Super Bowl, you have to get to in their case, the AFC Championship game, which they now have done 7 times in a row, which, as far as I know, has been pretty much unheard of.
Well, that's pretty much God's number, right? Seven number of completion, like they say.
That is true. So hopefully, the 7th time will be the last for a while, because I and many other people are starting to get a little sick of seeing them.
It gets a bit frustrating, especially considering I know. Um, well, I'm not going to get into that, but um, well, there have also been some notable, well, negative facts like that I found, like Patrick Mahomes, their quarterback, this regular season was sacked a new career record 36 times, and also had his lowest career season passer rating, 67.6. So, yeah, it's probably not going to be a cakewalk.
No, he's only been making about 2/3 of his passes, which generally speaking is still at least okay. But as you pointed out, this is like the lowest of his career. And this kind of goes into what I've seen a lot of people say is that their win loss record, as good as it is, does not paint a full picture. Others have said the Chiefs are one of the worst teams they've ever seen to have a record like this. And the stats that you're showing further push that idea forward. Because it's like, yeah, they have only lost like twice this season. But if you look at a lot of the scores of some of their victories, they have been that close. Like they'll score a last second field goal, or a penalty will be called that saves their butts, whether it's justified or not. But that's a debate for another time. But it's like they're not as good, I would say, as their record makes it look.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of analysts would probably agree with that. And they also notably lost their final game of the regular season, which may not have been exactly consequential, but it shows they're at least that they're not infallible.
Well, yeah, They did lose a couple times, once to the Bills, so that's definitely something worth noting. And you definitely, I would imagine, not prefer to want to lose the last game of the regular season before you go into the playoffs, because then that kind of leaves you on a low note. And it's like if you win going into the playoffs, and it's like we're riding this high, we got to keep that going, and that'll hopefully get you pumped up, motivated, and put out the very best that you got.
Well, I didn't really think much of it. I wasn't all that excited about the Bills' regular season finale because by then they were already locked into their postseason seed. So figured
Right.
it couldn't be really consequential at that point. But um, yeah, yeah. So personally, I didn't think that much of it in that case.
That definitely is also a very valid answer, especially because a lot of times, whether it be in the preseason or some of the last regular season games when the team's already locked in, they will often bench some of their star players or some of their key players because if those people get injured as they're going into the playoffs, it could badly affect how the team performs. So they want to keep them safe, they want to keep them healthy so that they have their best lineup going into these crucial games. So sometimes those last games or the last game or two doesn't mean much, but sometimes it can make a little bit of a difference, especially if you can get the bye week, skipping the first round of the playoffs altogether,
Yeah,
getting the home field advantage against one or
right.
two teams. Now, I think you used to be able to get the home field advantage for the actual Super Bowl, but I think they started going to one specific location every year to kind of avoid having that happen.
Yeah, and it happened a couple times in recent years where there was a team that played in it on their own turf, but that was, I think, purely coincidental with the Buccaneers and then the Rams the year after that. But I don't think it was uh, the same old system, just a coincidence.
Sure.
Yeah, but it looks like there have been more consistent, outstanding facts when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. One, they achieved their first 10-win streak in franchise history. So for the
Yep.
first time, they won 10 games in a row. And their running back, Saquon Barkley, he, he led the NFL in rushing attempts, rushing yardage per game, and yardage from scrimmage. And also, the team scored most points in any single conference title game since 1970 and won their final two regular games.
Yeah, I'm probably going to sound a bit biased when talking about this team because, heck, they're my favorite team. But yeah, those are definitely some very promising statistics going into this Super Bowl. Saquon Barkley has been a major spotlight on our team. He has made a huge difference, especially in the running game. Like just this past game against the Commanders took, what was it, like 10 minutes or something like that to get down the field, like 18 plays, just to end up getting a field goal. And then on the next possession that the Eagles had, all they did was pass it to Barkley, and he ran all the way down the field for a touchdown. It's like moments like that where I feel a little more confident going in to the Super Bowl because it's like if they can't stop Barkley, then I feel like we have a legitimate chance. But of course, excuse me, Barkley is not the only person out there. Like with anybody else, it's a team effort.
Right.
And from what I've been observing and the statistics I've been reading about, the Eagles have the highest ranked defense in the entire league this year and a very stacked offensive line. I think that can really help. Uh, One thing that I've noticed that may hinder us a little bit is that our passing game is a little bit inconsistent. Like Jalen Hurts, he's really good when he's at the top of his game. But I've noticed a lot of times that sometimes he'll hang on to the ball for just a little too long, and that either causes players to come by and force him out of the pocket, or he has to just throw the ball away, wasting a down, or he gets sacked. So it's like if he can stay on top of his game and utilize his offensive line really well, and then the defense puts in the work, I feel like we have a shot.
Yeah, well, I feel like, yeah. Overall, I was also doing some calculations on like net points, winning, losing margins, and and in all of those categories for like in the regular season, and the Eagles have the better numbers. So, for example, the Eagles. Now, for those who don't know, the net points is basically the term they use or commonly use for the difference between points scored and points allowed by a team. And and in the regular season, the Eagles managed 160 net points to the Chiefs 59, and the Eagles' biggest winning margin, 34-point gap compared to Kansas City's 19. So right there, two pretty respectable advantage. Not advantages, maybe like better numbers there.
For sure. And that kind of circles back around to how I was pointing out how many of the Chiefs' wins were by a small margin. So the fact that their biggest winning margin is 19, that should tell you something and something fierce. It's like, yeah, a win is a win. Even if you win by 1 point, that's still a victory.
Yeah.
But you generally don't want to cut it that close.
Well, no, because pretty much anything could happen at that point.
Oh, absolutely. Like anybody could score a point at the last second that totally shifts the tide and ultimately the result.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the Eagles' biggest losing margin only lost by 17. For Kansas City, their biggest losing margin, 38 points. And it was against a division rival that scored more total points in the season. I think it was maybe specifically the Denver Broncos, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So, yeah, a bit of a no team color pun here, but red flag.
Yeah. Yeah, they only lost twice, so it's easy to narrow down who it was that they lost to that badly.
Yeah.
But yeah, you certainly don't want to lose by that much.
Yeah.
I don't think when we faced the Commanders this past NFC Championship, I don't think the margin was that big, but it was definitely getting close because they started off with the lead with a field goal, and then the Eagles started scoring touchdown after touchdown after touchdown, ended up scoring, I think it was like 55 by the end, whereas Washington only had like 20 something. So I'd love to see that happen again. I'm not expecting it to, but I've noticed in the playoffs, the Eagles have been able to get teams to fumble the ball a handful of times. And that could make a huge difference right there on its own, because then we could get the ball back, have a great start on the field to try and get a touchdown or at least a field goal, if nothing else. If we can do that to the Chiefs, then we could really throw them off their rhythm.
I also did some similar calculations for the postseason or the playoffs. Kansas City's postseason net points, in the postseason they scored 12 points only more than they allowed, and the Eagles, for them, 50. Big difference there.
Yeah, hopefully these statistics stay consistent, because every once in a while you get a really good team that has all these great stats and they look really promising. And then for some reason, when they get to a game that is just really crucial, all of a sudden they just collapse and they seem to forget how to play football. And I really hope that doesn't happen with the Eagles, because not only have we only ever won a single Super Bowl in history, but the last time they were in the Super Bowl was when the Chiefs started their three-peat 2 years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago at this point. So hopefully this can be a nice rematch where we take the victory this time. And with the stats that we have, I feel like it could happen.
Yeah, what you were saying earlier about consistency, I was thinking back to Super Bowl 42, the infamous like defeat of the undefeated New England Patriots by the New York Giants, an Eagles rival. Um, of course, the Pats that season they set a number of records, mhm, had some notable beasts among their squad, and then the Giants came in for the Super Bowl and outwitted them a number of times, um, sa- sacking Tom Brady 4 times, causing a fumble one of those times, and and take their defense really shown. And yeah, it just goes to show you never really know.
Yeah, it's often as they say, it's not over until it's over. They may be defeated up until the final game, but that doesn't mean they're going to win the final game. And evidently, they didn't, meaning that the 1972 Dolphins are still the only team in the NFL to have a perfect record. Granted, the rules were a little bit different back then, but still.
Yeah. Kansas City, their biggest winning margin in the postseason, only 9. And it was against a team that won their regular season finale, unlike they themselves did. Meanwhile, the Eagles, their biggest win, well, NFC title game by 32 against a division rival that
Mhm.
scored more regular season points than they did. So that's saying a lot.
Yeah, I really wasn't sure what was going to happen with the NFC Championship game because in the regular season, we beat them once, they beat us once. So this was kind of a 2 out of 3 thing. I honestly felt like it could go either way. And at first, it started out that way. It looked like it could go swaying either direction. But really, once the Eagles had the lead, which didn't take long, they never really lost it and they kept extending their lead over the course of the game. And there was one, I don't know if infamous is the right word, but one segment in the game that I really think messed up the mindset of the Commanders is when the Eagles were on the goal line. They were doing their brotherly shove, that well known play that a lot of people want banned for some reason. They go for it and didn't quite get there yet. So they try it again. But then someone on the Commanders, I think his last name was like Luvu. It was spelled like Luvu. Uh, he jumped over the line before the ball was snapped, causing the ball to get even closer to the goal line. Then on the very next play, the same thing happens again. He tries to jump over the line to stop them from pushing themselves into the end zone. So that brought the ball even closer. Then somebody else, not necessarily jumping over the line, but definitely, uh, I think encroachment is how they said it. Like that's what the penalty was called. And the refs were saying that they actually started to warn the Commanders that if they kept this up, then the Eagles would just automatically get the points even if they didn't get into the end zone. And throughout this whole time, the only thing that the Eagles were doing was a brotherly shove. And basically, after they got that warning to the Commanders, the Eagles then scored anyway. So those 3 or 4 consecutive penalties probably really messed with the Commanders' heads. It's like, okay, now we're just constantly messing up what is going on.
Yeah, get control of yourself, man.
Yeah, that's a key factor as well, is not just in how well you play, but how well you can keep calm under pressure. Because if you don't have good composure or you're distracted or whatever, that can easily affect how you play, which can also sway the result of the game. And with a huge game like the Super Bowl, where winner takes all, that can naturally induce a lot of pressure. And if you're not focused or keeping calm, then you could collapse and people will wonder what happened.
Yeah, well, what's done is done now, and now I have some. I also just well, like today, maybe yesterday, was doing some individual comparison calculations here. I figured, of course, I figure one of the big talking points, of course, be the quarterbacks. In this case, Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. And I figured out that this season, Mahomes had 58% more completed passes and 35% more passing yards. But again, anything can happen.
Well, I will definitely give Patrick Mahomes that. He definitely had more passes and more yards out of them. But I think there's also two reasons for that. One being, as I mentioned before, Jalen Hurts sometimes holds on to the ball for too long and just throws it away when he sees nobody open. So that can definitely play into it. But I also think part of the reason is because they've been running the ball a lot more frequently, especially to runners like Barkley. So he wouldn't have had as many passes to work with, resulting in his pass completion rating maybe not being as good because he didn't attempt it as many times as Mahomes did.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But
And of course,
I could be speculating too. So
yeah, sure. And second, I also compared the two uh, running backs, like the two key running backs of the teams, and figured out Saquon Barkley. uh, This season had 175% more rushing yards and 61% more yards per attempt, which is relatively pretty explosive. And I don't think I should be too surprised from what little I have seen of him. So
yeah, we were definitely grateful to the Giants, either seriously or jokingly, when they basically got rid of Barkley and we took him on. Because man, he's, as I mentioned earlier, he's been a major spotlight on our team, and just his running game is phenomenal. He's got good speed, he's got good control. He gets knocked down, he gets back up, and he keeps going. And I don't know exactly how many times this happened, but there were at least a few instances throughout the season, even in the playoffs, where they just give the ball to him and he runs all the way down the field, which can definitely help the yardage amount. But what I can respect him for is, despite being as good as he is and getting all these high numbers and what have you, I really don't think he's letting it get to his head. And part of the reason I say that is because I think it was near the end of the regular season, Barkley could have had an opportunity to break a certain record in terms of how many yards in a game or in a regular season, something like that. But he chose giving the ball to somebody else in one or two games, keeping him from breaking the record, at least at first. I think he still did in the end, but he's always giving his allies, or his teammates, I should say, opportunities to do just the same thing that he's doing. There's been several videos of him leaping in excitement whenever some of his teammates are doing really well. So even if he wasn't as good of a player as he is, I got to respect him for how humble he seems to be.
yeah, it is a team effort, and you can't really succeed in a game like this on your own. You feel
No.
like, and well, like you can't do everything, and they can do some things that you can't, and feel like you got to be able to take full advantage of what everyone's strengths are, and then the team as a whole should have a better shot as a result of that.
Exactly. And that's kind of why I don't like whenever the announcers act like the quarterback or a particular player is the only person out there, especially when it comes to someone like Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. They would often say something like, and Tom Brady wins another one. It's like, no, Tom Brady and the rest of the Patriots won another one, not just him. If he
And
didn't
I
have a
feel like
good team, he would have gotten slaughtered after a while.
kind of the opposite happens where or if the team collapses, they'll kind of blame it all on the quarterback. I'm like, I'm like, if I'm like, if that happened to me, if I were a quarterback and reporters were talking that way about me, I'd be like, well, that guy could have done better too, or something, you know?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, the quarterback got sacked a few times, but that's partly because the defensive line wasn't able to protect them very well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah. Speaking of I get well, maybe not speaking of, but in terms of defense, I also did a linebacker comparison and calculated that their top linebacker, Zach Bond, the
Hmm.
Eagles, um, achieved 17% more sacks this season than the leading linebacker in Kansas City. So another, I guess, bright light there.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into this a little bit more because I know you have at least one or two other comparisons that you wanted to look at. But this just goes into how the Philadelphia Eagles have the highest ranked defense in the league right now because of these sacks and the ways they can mess up the offensive team, whether it be because of fumbles or some other form of a turnover. But you could have a good offense, but if you don't have a good defense to match, then the offense can only do so much to keep you in the game.
Yeah, it's kind of like that saying, defense wins championships.
It definitely can.
Yeah, yeah. And then I did a comparison of the defensive backs. Um, the leader for the Eagles among the defensive backs, C.J. Gardner Johnson, um, reportedly achieved 100% more interceptions and also scored a touchdown this year, unlike Kansas City's top defensive back, Jaden Hicks. So they're very superior there.
Oh, yeah, just further evidence as to how solid our defense has been. Sometimes they do let something through that probably shouldn't, but
Yeah.
just how many interceptions, how many fumbles, the touchdowns they're able to score, and just it's great to see if it's your favorite team at the very least. And considering how well they've been doing, I feel like in this upcoming Super Bowl, the defense is going to make a huge difference. As long as they can stay solid, which so far, for the most part, they have been.
And then finally, I did a calculation of how did each team's numbers change from last regular season to this one. And in the case of the Chiefs, mm, they achieved 36% more wins and 77% fewer net points, while the Eagles got 27% more wins and 3,100% more net points, if I calculated everything right. So, so considering all that I've written down, I feel like the Eagles kind of have the edge, but it's probably anyone's game.
Yeah, statistically speaking, I would definitely say that the Eagles have the advantage, but they're going up against the Chiefs, which a lot of people are not too fond of for one reason or another right now. Whether it be because of the refs or because of how much they're capitalizing on this whole dynasty of the Chiefs thing, like they did with Tom Brady and the Patriots, or just how much they're capitalizing financially on the fact that Taylor Swift is showing up. It's like a lot of things just seem to be happening in their favor to the point where it's kind of concerning, if not questionable. So even though we have the better stats, I still feel like the Eagles could be fighting an uphill battle, but we'll see when the game actually happens. I'm rooting for the Eagles, of course, as I'm sure a few other people are that really don't like the Chiefs. So fingers crossed, but I still think it could go either way.
I do remember, it was either 2 or 3 years ago, the last time they clashed in the Super Bowl. Well, and you and I actually watched it in person together with a few friends of ours, and
Yep.
it really came, down to the wire, down to one last, field goal, which ultimately, sealed the win at the end. It was super close, close. It was a 3-point decision at the end, and, so, we know, considering that, and even considering the Eagles' performance over the Patriots, like, even, like, a few years before that, that, well, that they've got the goods. They can play. Mm, It's just a matter of, will what they do be enough, I guess. So,
Yeah, they definitely have the stats, they have the skill, they have a grudge, a score to settle with the Chiefs. I really think they do have a shot. It's going to be tough, I feel like, but keeping their composure, staying solid, this could be a fun game to watch. Emphasis on could be. But of course, I'll be rooting for the Eagles.
yes, fly Eagles fly.
Yes,
Absolutely.
sir.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for now. And of course, tell us what you think about the Super Bowl, or what you're anticipating seeing in it, and anything else you have to ask or say. Please direct that to either my Instagram, Seth underscore Marianos underscore AU, or our YouTube comment section, and stream the full series of More Layers on Spotify, Anchor, or as it's now called, I believe, Spotify for Creators, and on YouTube as well, and and keep the convo going.
Yeah, let us know who your favorite team is, who you're rooting for in the Super Bowl, and why. If you're rooting for either one, do you think the halftime show is going to be good? Because sometimes it doesn't always get the best reception. Uh, which team would you have rather seen? And just after the Super Bowl happens, let us know what you thought.
Yep. All right. And until next time, everybody take care.
So long, everyone.